Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Been off for a while, but we're back and we're going to do a bit of a roundup of topics from the last time, since the last time we were chatting, and there's been a bit going on.
As always, there's lots going on, and you only realise that when you stop for a few weeks, isn't it? And then you realise how much we've missed out on.
Absolutely. So, if you've been following my Instagram accounts, hopefully you have been. I've been posting a lot from Japan and China in the last couple of weeks, and got a bit of good photography in there because there was a lot of inspirational places and food to sort of capture, which was exciting and nice, and always recommend to go visit those places. I've done it quite a few times now and highly recommend it. Okay, let's start with Trump, a frequent topic of choice of ours, only because, who would have thought that even more would have been happening since we've been away. And I think it's that dual thing of the Democrats really coming in and having one of their biggest sort of wins in recent memory, even though there seems to be some conjecture about did they really win as big as what they thought they did or whatever. Sounds like it was significant, given the everything they were working with and whatever. And then beyond that, there's Trump's reaction to all of it and how talks of him being unhinged, immoral, really pushing and testing the boundaries of the legal system and what he should and shouldn't be doing as president. It's been just another nutty sort of couple of weeks in this regard.
Well, it has, and I mean, this is the reality show that just keeps on moving from episode to episode, and we're now at the point where he's gone through the midterms. He managed to maintain, I think, the majority in the Senate, but lost, I think, ground in the House of Reps. This probably won't hurt him too badly, although they say that now the Democrats have got the ability to launch all sorts of inquiries and everything else. But look, he's got in here 2 years now. It would take them surely another 2 years to get him out. I think we might see him last the full term unless they can find out that he's done something absolutely atrocious while in office.
The only thing I would say is that he might be the only victim or the only perpetrator of his downfall might even just be himself, because and one of the things I'm pointing to is where he fired the Attorney General and then put one of his people in. And there's a whole question mark around whether that's actually constitutional or not. And but regardless of that question, there's also the optics of it that he put a stooge in, to sort of keep an eye on things. That's the perception of it. And if he keeps going down that route, because he can't help himself, he likes to poke the bear to see how far he gets. And I'm just wondering if it might actually bite him because he doesn't have that full support of Congress anymore now that one of the chambers is flipped.
Yeah, look, I agree, but I'm done predicting anything that involves him now. The thing is that, and I was thinking about this the other day, but I think he's probably been better behaved in office than he's ever been behaved before in his life. So there's probably the zenith for Trump, as a human being, but yeah, you're right. I think he's safely removed from his past, but if he blows himself up, it'll be something that he actually does in office. Yes. Because if he survived on his past records this far, what can they do to him? I don't know.
Yep, exactly. All right, we'll move on now. I've got a couple of other things that we're going to go through, but sort of related in the sense that it's got to do with Russian interference with the election, but I actually have been really not that I was that big a fan of Facebook anyway in the first place, but there was a time when it was kind of useful, but they seem to be going from bad to worse in terms of the way they are approaching. Sort of probes into their behavior. And the big thing that happened while I was away was just this story that came out about how much Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg were going, the lengths they were going to try and obfuscate, I guess would be the best word, against what Facebook's impact was on Russian interference, et cetera, and other matters. To the point of Zuckerberg coming out and, sort of defiantly saying, we're a force for good, Cheryl's doing a great job, all this sort of stuff. And I don't know, is it me that feels like they're mishandling the PR story here if they want to turn the ship around? I just feel like from my perspective, I feel like they're getting worse. They're making themselves look worse the more they're doing this, and it kind of feels like they're inexperienced in terms of how to handle the public perception of what has been happening with them.
Well, I think for them, really, Facebook is for the world, but also for the people at Facebook, for Zuckerberg himself. The genie's out of the bottle, the created Facebook, and they can't put it back in. And you know me, I love a good conspiracy. I actually think that they're out to get Zuckerberg because he would have run for the president. And I think there's forces, and I probably don't think that they're Republican, probably more likely Democrat, that are out to clip his wings. And I think the other thing that you're about to find is that the world is closing in on Facebook. They're demanding proper reporting of the Facebook stats at a time when Facebook's usage is actually collapsing. And I think that you'll see now that if you actually look at the changes that they've had to make to comply or appear to comply with public opinion, particularly political opinion, I think you'll find that the reach through Facebook, their advertising, and all the models that they had in the system, which was unregulated except by them, is now like it's probably completely broken.
Yeah,
would be my guess, because their behaviours are people that are sticking their fingers in dikes and bailing buckets out of sinking ships. Not that I think for a second that Facebook's in danger of disappearing, but I think maybe the Facebook business model, which is, remember, hardwired into that platform.
Yeah.
You can't just change it as this whole scenario has shown. Facebook was basically didn't have any people looking at who was posting what, and they got caught short. So I think this is, for them, this is a really, really tough time. I mean, how do you change the platform which was meant to be automated? I don't know.
Exactly. Just a disclaimer, of course, I'm aware of the irony of the fact that we're a user of their ancillary services like Instagram, who by definition are not really any better. But I think it's actually the main platform itself. I think that's the problem. Yeah. But having said that, I've actually been thinking in the back of my mind, am I going to reach a point where I'm going to have to stop using their services if they don't, I don't know, be a bit more genuine and sincere about what they're on about? And maybe, just maybe, the decision, I know, well, obviously from a financial perspective, going public was the best idea in the world because it made everyone rich at that company, but it might turn out to be the downfall of the company in the sense that it's the end of the party, like Justin Timberlake's character said in The Social Network. The day they went public is when it was probably the beginning of the end of maybe the major part of the actual network itself.
That's right. I think you're right. That is the end of the party. And, I think it's, make no mistake, that Facebook is pumping so much resource now into Instagram and WhatsApp, makes you think they're trying to get away as far away from the Facebook model as possible.
Exactly. All right, let's move to another tech company that's not hurting financially, at least. Apple. So we've talked about them obviously a lot. They've released a whole bunch of products. in recent months. Now there's talk of the iPhone XR sales not living up to expectations because it was pumped up as the volume phone because it was at a lower price point. That the XS isn't maybe selling as many units as what Wall Street was expecting. It just. And of course, there's the big shock horror. Apple is not going to report the numbers of iPhones sold every quarter anymore. They're just going to report the financial results. And I just find this whole story amusing because I think Apple's going to be all right somehow. And whether or not it's just a whole sort of beat up to just like make a story out of nothing. They've been raising the average selling price and convincing people, and I have to count myself in that as well because I've been still buying their stuff to pay more for their products, saying that we're making them better than ever. We're making them better than, well, this is their story, of course. It's all arguable, making them better than anyone else. Arguably, the chips that they're making on their own, particularly for the iOS devices, they're like, they're really, really solid performers. The one that's in the iPhone and the current iPads are apparently MacBook Pro level performance.
Wow.
So, although iOS is not really taking much advantage of that at the moment, apparently. So, I'm just wondering why this keeps coming back. That they're not going to hurt from this. They're going to they're still going to be making truckloads of money out of all of this. It's not the end of the world. So why do these stories keep coming back? And
I think this one just relates to the investment idea. That if you bought Apple at a $1 trillion company or whatever it was, then now the price is falling. Because remember, a lot of the American companies don't pay dividends. So, it's pure speculation on the price and trading those shares. So, I don't know. People get really wrapped up in this. Once upon a time, only a few people had shares. No one cares. Now everyone's digging for gold wherever it is. And, it just, I think it's really manipulation of the market because this is in somebody's interest. But, I think at least the XS and XR raised some interest in phones. I didn't even remember hearing about Samsung's last launch, never mind any of the other brands. So, in fact, some of the Chinese sort of imitation brands now are getting bigger launches and are more interesting phones simply, I think, because of what they offer at the price point. But, I don't think it'll affect Apple for a minute. Although I've said this before, and I do think that Apple now is starting to look like Apple in the mid-1990s before Steve Jobs returned. Too many products, not sure what any of them do. And I wouldn't be worried about phone sales. I'd be more worried about that Apple's losing its identity.
Well, the latest iPad Pros, for instance, kind of fit that because I was and a lot of the reviews bore this out that it's laptop pricing now, and you're not getting a device that can replace your laptop. Now, I mean, there's a lot of toing and froing about, well, does it actually need to do that? Can you whatever? But it just seems to me like, they released that MacBook Air, and fine machine, but given the performance you're getting out of that thing, which is, I'm not sure how it measures up against the iPad, but if this new iPad's like a MacBook Pro level, that would seem to suggest to me that it's better than the MacBook Air. Why are you buying the MacBook Air now?
I completely agree, and I think some of the Apple executives should go into a store with someone who doesn't know anything about computing. And once upon a time, you could go in and you could buy an iMac or a MacBook, or you could buy an iPad and pretty much understand what you were getting. For the life of me, if I walk into a store now, if you're tech savvy, maybe you know these things. What's the difference between a normal iPad and iPad Mini? And how do I select which one I want? And then why would I go to an iPad Pro? Do I need to? I'm not a pro. And, probably for most people who watch us here or listen to our podcast, that's not so much of an issue.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you I've been in stores and I now see people scratching their heads in front of the Apple displays exactly in the same way as they scratch their heads in front of the PC corners, which means that people just can't work out what they're buying anymore.
And the other
even
thing,
if they want an Apple.
The other thing too that I'm a bit concerned about is like you got the overall pricing and what you're getting for that price. The 12-inch MacBook is the one that really bothers me because it really isn't a performer. Like obviously it's good for day-to-day tasks, and if you want that ultra light, put it in, sort of your backpack type thing, and you won't even notice it's there type laptop, then it's great. But you're paying almost $2,000 for that. And for me, at least maybe I'm old school here, but once you start spending that kind of money, you want some power. You want some, and I'm just wondering, surely the fact that, I can understand that there's expense in slimming it down to the point that it's at, but I didn't think it was that costly a thing. Particularly when all you have to do is spend maybe $200 more. You get a laptop that's a little bigger, a little thicker, and it's probably 5 times more powerful and can last for 5-6 years.
That's right. And, but you're right about prices going up. Even in the PC sector now, you could get a great laptop for about $600 a couple of years ago. For some magical reason, they've all gone up to $1,000.
Yeah.
And they're still using the same Intel chips.
I wonder if they did that just before the Black Friday sales that are happening at the moment. But anyway. Okay, we'll end up on our last topic now, complete change of pace. I noticed that Brexit made it into the news a couple of times while I was away, and won't retread some of that because that's all kind of amusing, deals falling apart, people resigning, all that sort of stuff. But there was a topic around Scotland's science minister wanting to protect research from Brexit, which I found quite interesting, which was in effect, also brought a question around students and getting visas and ensuring that sort of cross flow that had been happening can still happen, and it doesn't disadvantage anyone trying to get an education or trying to do research or anything like that. And it highlighted to me an example of what is never thought about when someone's trying to go, we've got to get out of there, without thinking through everything, which seems to be it's kind of like emblematic of what the whole issue of Brexit was.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there's 2 ways to see Brexit. So, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but if you're young, upwardly mobile, privileged, irrespective of your ethnicity or gender, you probably would be pro EU because of the visa and the travel arrangements and the opportunities that are available to you. If you're not in Britain, then, you probably are unlikely to be working in science or higher education or roles like that. Whatever role you might be in, Brexit makes sense. And, of course, neither side probably really understands the other side's view. The thing is for Brexit is that the EU spends a lot of money on science. And, of course, to access that money for research, you need to be an EU member. Then there's a second complication as well around the visa requirements. So, it potentially becomes a legal minefield. Now, it's quite interesting because I think we see in our societies, our Western societies, quite frequently, laws that just aren't enforced. I would have thought that some laws like immigration for highly skilled and established people, i.e. they have a permanent residency, shouldn't be revoked just because of a Brexit. But this is the sort of thing that's just going to make a hash of everything. It could cause a brain drain if it's enforced. It could cause a collapse in funding. And I think this is what the minister is just trying to head off, or at least get some visibility on so people don't make some catastrophic moves.
And if it's not just this, imagine all of the other significant areas where there could be potential impacts. And if you look at just this one and what could happen, and then you try to multiply that out nationwide for the UK, it could be very problematic.
Well, think of your creative industries, not just your science and higher education, but think of creative industries. Think of industries that have footprints, such as and there is trade within the EU, big trade, and that's where this potentially, this could be a real train wreck. So I don't know. I think the best thing to happen would be that they Brexit however they choose to do it, and then they probably just choose not to enforce some of the realities, because it's not going to be good for anyone, EU as well.
Exactly. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. That was a bit of a marathon whip around of some topics that we went through. Fascinating times, and I'm sure we'll be ready to get right into it in the next couple of weeks in the lead up to the end of the year.
Absolutely.
All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our channels, YouTube, Vimeo. Got an RSS feed so you can listen to us in podcast apps. So it'd be greatly appreciated if you visited the website, and hope you enjoy all the content there. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.